He smiles, speaks gently, even labels himself a nice guy. But beneath the surface lies something brittle, fragile, and dangerously deceptive. Machiavelli didn't fear the obvious tyrant. He feared the weak man, pretending to be strong, because when life applies pressure, that mask cracks, and underneath, you'll find rot where there should have been resilience. If you can't recognize him, you'll fall for his illusion. Here are Machiavellian truths that expose a weak man. No matter how well he hides, he chooses comfort over conquest. It is better to act and repent than not to act and regret. Niccolò Machiavelli. A weak man doesn't dream of empires. He dreams of ease. He trades growth for convenience, long-term power for momentary pleasure, and bold strategy for safe stagnation. To him, life is a retreat, not a mission. While the strong embrace discomfort as the crucible of greatness, the weak flee from it. They dodge hard conversations, sidestep real challenges, and always have a convenient excuse for missed chances. They'll cloak their fear in soft language. Now isn't the right time, I'm just protecting my peace. But don't be fooled. Behind the calm lies fear. Fear of risk, fear of failure, fear of being seen as inadequate. Machiavelli knew true leaders must sometimes walk through fire. The weak man? He can't even stand the heat. Why weak men are dangerous. To lead with power, a man must make hard choices and endure short-term discomfort in pursuit of long-term dominance. A prince who only wants to be loved, to remain untested and undisturbed, is no prince at all. He is easily conquered by other men, by temptation, by life itself. The weak man chooses luxury before labor. He isn't driven by purpose. He's driven by the fear of pain. You'll see it in how he lives. He chases distractions. He drowns in entertainment. He becomes dependent on substances. He clings to shallow relationships. He does just enough to get by, never enough to rise. His body remains undisciplined, his mind unfocused. He lets the world shape him, and when life hits, he blames the world in return. Discipline, clarity, consistent action. These are foreign to him. Contrast this with the Machiavellian ideal, a man who delays gratification, who prepares in silence, who sacrifices today so he can rule tomorrow. That man is dangerous. That man commands respect, without needing to speak. Why? Because he doesn't fear the grind. He thrives in it. The comfort-worshipping man, on the other hand, is breakable. The moment life gets hard, he crumbles. The moment he's tested, he folds. He's like a castle built from sand, looks strong until the first wave crashes in. Worse than that, his weakness spreads. Surround yourself with weak men and your own standards begin to rot. You'll start lowering your goals. You'll start justifying laziness. You'll start becoming him. The Machiavellian truth: comfort is a trap. Power is forged in adversity, and the man who flees from challenge is unfit to lead, to protect, or to rule. Want to spot a weak man? Watch what he avoids. If he dodges the hard road, if he escapes into pleasure, if he clings to comfort over victory, you're not looking at a man, you're looking at a liability. Sign 1. Obsession with validation. A weak man isn't governed by discipline. He's ruled by emotion. His moods, fears, and impulses override reason, timing, and strategy. He doesn't think, he reacts. He explodes over small disagreements. He spirals into self-pity when criticized. He vents his frustrations to anyone who'll listen. Friends, strangers, and worst of all, social media. He calls it honesty. He calls it transparency. But in truth, he's exposed and vulnerable. In Machiavellian terms, this man is easy to control. Why? Because he's predictable. He wears his heart on his sleeve and broadcasts his next move for both allies and enemies to see. A wise strategist knows, whoever can trigger you owns you. The emotionally undisciplined man is a puppet, and his strings are in plain sight. Machiavelli warned, A ruler must be both lion and fox, strong and cunning. That requires restraint. The fox hides his fear. The lion conceals his wounds. But the weak man, he roars when he's scared. He cries when he wants comfort. He spills secrets when insecure. And once the world sees his emotional leash, they'll drag him anywhere they please. This lack of control poisons every aspect of his life. It erodes respect. It invites manipulation. Partners won't trust him. Leaders won't promote him. Adversaries will toy with him. Worse still, he has no patience. If a plan takes time, he panics. If he meets resistance, he complains. If he's forced to wait for power, he quits. Not because the goal is unreachable, but because the waiting bruises his ego. Understand this. True strength isn't emotionless. It's precise. Power isn't loud, it's controlled. The strongest men feel deeply, but act deliberately. They take hits without flinching. They hear threats without reacting. That silence, that poise under pressure, that's the mark of a Machiavellian mind. But the weak man leaks emotion, like a cracked drum. Watch what he says when he's angry. Listen to how he talks when nervous. Observe how fast he breaks under pressure. If he reveals his hand constantly, you're not dealing with a strategist. You're dealing with a liability dressed as a man. Overcompensates with showmanship. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you truly are. Niccolò Machiavelli, the weak man doesn't build substance. He builds spectacle. He isn't strong, so he tries to look strong. He isn't powerful, so he acts powerful. When his inner world is hollow, he fills it with noise, flash, and bravado. He's the loudest in the room. He brags, he exaggerates, he postures, he flaunts cars he doesn't own, quotes books he's never read, adopts the persona of someone he thinks commands respect. But it's all a costume, shiny, loud, and fragile, masking deep insecurity. Where a strong man lets his silence speak for him, the weak man performs. He needs the audience. He needs the applause. His identity is borrowed from influencers, trends, aesthetics he doesn't understand. He imitates masculinity. He doesn't live it. Why? Because deep down he knows the truth. He hasn't earned respect, so he tries to rent it with flash. Machiavelli would see this man as dangerous, not because he holds real power, but because he crafts the illusion of it. But when reality strikes, when pressure comes, when life demands substance, he collapses, because costumes don't protect. They just delay the fall. Emotional dependence disguised as strength. He's built an image, but not resilience. This is the kind of man who brags about future success, yet avoids the struggle that earns it. He shames others to feel superior. He craves constant attention, just to feel alive. To the untrained eye, he may seem confident, even charming. But look closer. There's insecurity behind the smile, envy behind the compliments, desperation behind the confidence. A Machiavellian man understands this. True power is quiet. The most dangerous men don't shout. They don't flaunt their wins. They don't need applause. Their influence is subtle, measured by results, not reactions. Their presence commands without needing to perform. But the weak man, he can't stand invisibility. If no one is watching, he feels like he doesn't exist. That's why he posts obsessively, why he brags endlessly, why his image is more curated than his character. To him, influence equals clout. But Machiavelli knew better. Influence is measured by control, consequence, and character. So watch carefully. If he constantly needs an audience, if he mistakes aesthetics for achievement, if he's loud, flashy, and always trying to prove he's a man, he isn't strong, he's compensating. And that's weakness in designer clothes. He fears isolation. The prince must learn to act alone. Niccolò Machiavelli. A weak man can't stand being alone. Not because he values connection, but because in solitude, he can't escape the truth. When the noise fades, when the distractions are gone, when there's no audience left, he's left with himself. and that terrifies him. That silence exposes what he's been hiding. His lack of purpose, his lack of discipline, his lack of self. So he surrounds himself with constant stimulation. People, screens, opinions, background noise. Not for connection, but for protection, from reflection. Leave him alone too long, and the facade starts to crack. The strong man embraces solitude. He uses it to sharpen thought, forge conviction, and build clarity. It's in isolation that leaders are made. But the weak man, he treats solitude like a prison, a mirror he can't bear to face. He jumps from friend group to friend group. He dreads silence, always scrolling, talking, playing music, doing something. He doesn't seek relationships for meaning. He seeks them to escape himself. He doesn't just fear being alone. He fears who he is without an audience. And because of that, he's easy to control. Anyone who offers comfort, noise, or distraction owns him. Sign 2. Avoidance of responsibility. Anyone who threatens his comfort becomes the enemy. Machiavelli warned of such men. They pose as leaders, but behave like followers. Fragile, dependent, and easy to conquer. They trade independence for belonging, judgment for approval, power for popularity. They can't walk alone, so they drift wherever the crowd pulls them, even if it leads to ruin. But it doesn't stop there. Their fear of isolation mutates into control. Because they can't be alone, they cling, they suffocate. They guilt trip. They manipulate. Not out of love, but out of emotional dependency. That's not strength. It's a ticking time bomb in human form. Now contrast that with the Machiavellian archetype. Solitude isn't something to flee. It's something to master. The fox learns in silence. The lion strengthens in solitude. Power requires the ability to stand alone, think independently, and move without needing applause. So look closely. If he panics when left alone, if he constantly needs attention, affirmation, or company, if solitude breaks him instead of sharpening him, you're not looking at a man preparing for greatness. You're looking at someone terrified of facing his own reflection and using others to hide from it. He lacks strategy, only reaction. The wise man does at once what the fool does at last. Niccolò Machiavelli. A weak man has no plan. He moves from one emotional impulse to the next. Like a leaf in the wind. No vision, no direction. He doesn't lead, he reacts. He doesn't prepare, he panics. And when the pressure rises, he fumbles for excuses instead of finding solutions. You'll spot him by his chaos. He talks about goals, but his actions never align. He jumps into commitments without weighing consequences. He lashes out when cornered. He changes direction based on mood, not logic. He confuses motion for progress, busyness for effectiveness. He stays active, but never advances. Meanwhile, a true Machiavellian mind plays in layers. Short-term tactics, mid-term maneuvers, long-term positioning. Power isn't improvised. It's orchestrated. But the weak man, he waits for life to force his hand. And by the time he reacts, it's too late. He's emotionally reactive. One insult unravels him. One critique destabilizes him. He sees every challenge to his ego as an attack, never a lesson. He doesn't think like a strategist. He thinks like a victim. That's why he's so easy to manipulate. People provoke him because they know he'll take the bait. He leaks his plans because he can't stay composed. He chases quick wins because he can't tolerate delay. And when everything collapses around him, he says, "I didn't see it coming." Of course he didn't. He never sees anything coming. Machiavelli's ideal man is not impulsive. He is calculated, not cold but deliberate. He may appear passive to the untrained eye, but it's not paralysis. It's patience. He waits with intent. He moves with precision. He strikes only when the odds favor him. He studies people, their pressure points, their patterns, their psychology. Where others act on emotion, he acts on insight. The weak man, he does none of this. Why? Because strategy takes effort. and effort demands self-control. Two things he's never mastered. In business, in relationships, in life. This man burns bridges he still needs. All to protect his fragile pride. He plays all his cards in the open, mistaking honesty for strength, when in truth, strategy is strength. So pay attention. Does he always respond emotionally? Does he act without a plan? Does he react to life instead of directing it? If so, you're not looking at a leader. You're looking at a pawn on someone else's chessboard. He seeks validation more than respect. It is far better to be feared than loved. If you cannot be both. Niccolò Machiavelli. The weak man doesn't seek respect. He chases approval, and in doing so he becomes addicted to validation. He'll sacrifice truth to avoid criticism. He'll betray values just to keep his image polished. He's not a rock, he's a mirror, constantly reflecting what others want to see. Around strong people he flatters. Around weak people he competes. Around women he performs. Around enemies he folds. He wears masks. Not out of strategic control, but out of sheer desperation. And Machiavelli knew, respect is forged through strength, consistency, and earned fear, not endless approval. A man obsessed with being liked is easily owned. He fears rejection more than disgrace. He trades integrity for inclusion, and ends up with neither. Watch him in a group setting, he avoids conflict, even when he knows he's right. He over-apologizes to keep everyone comfortable. He flatters power, not out of tact, but out of need. This isn't diplomacy, it's weakness. Respect can survive disagreement. Validation cannot. The more he feeds on praise, the more brittle he becomes. One piece of criticism, and he crumbles. One moment of being ignored, and he spirals. His confidence is borrowed, not built. And when the applause stops, so does his self-worth. That's why weak men often collapse in silence. No spotlight means no identity. And this hunger for validation, it bleeds into everything. He buys to impress, not to invest. He posts to be admired, not to connect. He conforms to trends that contradict his core. Because the truth is, he has no core. Just borrowed opinions. Fake humility. Surface-level charm. Validation over respect. A dangerous liability. Machiavelli would consider this man a dangerous liability in leadership. Why? Because when pressure hits, he folds, not toward principle, but toward popular opinion. He cannot make unpopular decisions. He will never choose respect over relevance. He seeks to please, not to lead. But the strong man, he walks through criticism unshaken. He doesn't need to be liked. He's willing to be feared if it means protecting his purpose. He chooses respect. Always, and if disappointment is the cost of staying true to power and principle, he pays it without hesitation. That's the kind of man who leads. The kind who lasts. So ask yourself, does he rely on compliments just to function? Does he chase praise, likes, and popularity at the expense of truth? Does he avoid upsetting others even when they're wrong? If so, you're not looking at a leader. You're looking at a puppet. A man dancing for approval. Never for power. Sign 3. Fear of confrontation. A prince must learn how not to be good, and use that knowledge when necessary. Niccolò Machiavelli. A weak man's greatest fear isn't failure, it's disapproval, and nothing threatens his fragile sense of belonging more than conflict. So, he avoids it at all costs. Even when the fight is justified, even when silence means surrender. He calls it peacekeeping. He says he's taking the high road, or protecting his energy, but Machiavelli would call it by its true name, cowardice, disguised as virtue. The strong man isn't reckless, but he's not passive. He knows when to fight. He confronts calmly, strategically, and with conviction. When his boundaries are crossed, he enforces them. When injustice appears, he acts. When betrayal surfaces, he responds with clarity, not hesitation. But the weak man, he avoids confrontation like prey avoids predators. He stays silent when disrespected. He lets his values be walked on. He tolerates toxic behavior, then justifies it with weak mantras like "I don't want drama. It's not worth it." But the truth is, he's not avoiding conflict because he's wise, he's avoiding it because he lacks a spine. You'll see this pattern in relationships. He forgives too quickly when he's mistreated. He lets manipulation slide. He folds when pressure rises. Eventually people stop respecting him, not because he's kind, but because he's predictable, passive, easy to walk over. Machiavelli understood this brutal law of power. Power respects power. If you won't assert yourself, someone else will do it for you. And the man who refuses to engage in necessary conflict will always serve those who are willing to. Even in leadership he collapses. He avoids hard conversations. He keeps toxic people around because he's afraid to fire them. He seeks consensus over clarity. And he loses control, not through an explosion, but through a slow, silent erosion of authority. Here's the truth. Conflict is not chaos. It's a tool to protect order, assert values and reveal character. But the weak man, he was never taught how to use it. So he runs, and in running he gives his power away. He gives power away, the cost of cowardice. The Machiavellian mind sees conflict, not as chaos but as a weapon, used with precision. Not every battle must be fought, but some must. Knowing when to fight, and how to fight, is what separates the strategic from the weak. So ask yourself, does he shrink when challenged? Does he stay silent when truth demands a voice? Does he hand over leadership just to avoid tension? If so, you're not looking at a peacekeeper. You're looking at a man who will betray your values, your mission, even you, just to stay comfortable. He exposes his plans prematurely. The lion cannot defend against traps. The fox cannot defend against wolves. One must be both. Niccolò Machiavelli. A weak man talks too much. He confuses exposure with strength. He announces his plans before they're formed. He reveals his goals before he's earned the discipline to reach them. He seeks applause before he's built armor strong enough to handle criticism. Why? Because he's not focused on execution. He's addicted to impression. He needs people to know he's going somewhere. Because without that external validation, he won't move at all. He confuses declaration with progress. But the moment he speaks his plan into the world, he weakens. He invites influence, interference, and sabotage before the foundation is even built. Machiavelli would see this as amateur behavior. A man lacking the cunning of the fox, one who doesn't yet understand the terrain. The fox adapts. He moves in silence. He reads the environment and strikes when the time is right. The weak man, he runs forward with a megaphone, unaware of the traps ahead. This habit reveals something deeper. He needs validation before he takes action. He needs reassurance before he lacks the mental strength to work in silence. He's not addicted to achievement. He's addicted to attention. And he overestimates loyalty. He believes people will cheer for his success, when many secretly hope he fails. Why? Because this man lives in public. He builds his self-worth on applause and aesthetics. And when the crowd turns silent or turns on him, he collapses. Final insight. Weakness always reveals itself. A weak man lives in the gap between loud ambition and quiet failure. He sets 10 goals, speaks about all of them, but follows through on none. And when he's questioned, he shifts blame. He downplays the importance. He rewrites the past to protect his ego. He's not focused on impact. He's obsessed with image. In contrast, the Machiavellian operator understands the most effective moves are made in silence. The strategist guards his information, shares selectively, uses misdirection when necessary. Power is not transparency. It's timing. And weak men, they have terrible timing. In negotiations, they show their hand too early. In competition, they reveal their intentions before securing leverage. They over-explain to prove themselves. They speak ambition into the world before they've built protection. And as a result, the world uses their openness against them. So pay attention. Does he talk more than he builds? Does he chase attention before results? Does he confuse exposure with progress? If so, you're not looking at a fox. You're not looking at a lion. You're looking at prey, loud, visible, and vulnerable. Because here's the truth. A weak man is not harmless. He's a liability to himself, to others, to you. Weakness doesn't stay hidden. It spreads. It betrays, and it always collapses under pressure. But now you've seen past the smile, the performance, the pity party. Now you know the Machiavellian truth. In a world of lions, the weak man dies pretending to be one. If you're ready to lead like a strategist, to move with precision, power, and patience, subscribe, stay sharp, and never bow to a coward in disguise.